Most students don't ask questions beyond that response. At times I wish they would. President Ronald Reagan is quoted as saying, "The colors of the flag signify the qualities that American citizens cherish." There are 13 horizontal stripes on the flag that signify the original 13 colonies. 7 red stripes that represent hardiness and valor. There are 6 white stripes that represent purity and innocence. The field of blue stands for vigilance, perseverance, and justice. It is filled with 50 offset 5-point stars, one for each state. The current version of the flag in the United States of America, or as some call it, Old Glory, is the 27th version in existence. Today we honor our veterans and service members. There are nearly 2 million active duty service members and approximately 18 million veterans. Since 1777, there are approximately 1.4 million who died while serving our country in wars. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month is identified as significant because of the connection in the end of World War I. Some people said that would be the war to end all wars. 101 years ago today, an unknown soldier was buried in Arlington National Cemetery. Other unknown soldiers were buried in other countries in remembrance of the war to end all wars. This became known as Armistice Day, an official holiday to be declared in 1938. Yet in 1939, we saw the start of World War II, and that would last until 1945. In 1954, President Eisenhower declared Armistice Day to be Veterans Day. While the date of celebration has varied due to laws such as the Uniform Holiday Bill, President Ford signed into law that Veterans Day will be held on November 11th, regardless of the day of the week, to remember the significance of the date. More importantly, Veterans Day serves to honor Americans' veterans for their patriotism, love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. We don't need just one day to remember veterans and their service to our country. Old Glory flies in front of buildings, businesses, schools, government offices, and homes across the nation. This flag represents the millions that have served and the millions that have died for the country. We remove our hats, we stand in salute, and we say the pledge daily. Not in honor of freedom alone, but in honor of those that have sacrificed their lives. We remove our hats when in a building that flies the American flag because we honor those that have served. We respect their lives. Regardless of your view of freedom, equality, and justice in the United States, you are free to have an opinion. Any disrespect to the flag is to disrespect those that have died to serve that flag. I asked somebody before this, what can I do when I have not served my country, served in wars, to honor those veterans? Their answer was, it is our duty to educate and inform others of the important significance of the flag. It is our duty to honor those that have served the country. At this time, please stand, remove cover for presentation of our colors, presented by members of the NCHS Color Guard.
Left wheel, on. Color guard, hold. Present, color.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
left wheel, march. Forward, march. Color guard, hold. Ball.
Hello, my name is Peyton, and this is Lily and Lily. We are 7th and 8th graders here at Dean Morgan and are members of the Morgan Mentors, a group that works in our school and community to try and create a more positive environment. While reading about Veterans Day, I stumbled upon a speech written for the American Legion. We would like to share a portion of these thoughts with you this afternoon. When the Governor Ronald Reagan introduced returning prisoner of war, John McClane, at a speaking engagement in 1974, the future president asked, "Where do we find such men?" He was speaking of many veterans. Then he answered, "We will find them in our streets, in the offices, the shops, and the workplaces of our country, and on farms." In other words, President Reagan was referring to ordinary people accomplishing extraordinary things.
Veterans come in all shapes and sizes, young and old, rich and poor, black and white, and nearly every category in between. They are men and women who served or are still serving America. Their families are diverse as well. We must remember the wives who briefly but anxiously dreaded every doorbell ring or telephone call as their husbands witnessed unspeakable horrors while fighting in hard-to-pronounce villages that most Americans could never find on a map. We need to remember the modern military families who deal with frequent address changes, interrupted employment by spouses, and the disproportionate sharing of parental responsibilities.
For what they do for us, we also remember and honor the families of our veterans on this day. Veterans Day is an important but symbolic way of saying thanks. At D. Morgan, we are dedicated and honored to remembering the legacy of all veterans because we are grateful for what these men and women have done for us. From defeating communism, fascism, and imperialism, to liberating slaves, keeping the peace during the Cold War, and battling terrorism today, veterans have accomplished remarkable things throughout our nation's history. Ladies and gentlemen, veterans have preserved the country that we all love so much. Thank you for all you've done in allowing me to speak on behalf of our nation's veterans. We are so honored to take the time to celebrate many of our nation's heroes. Thank you.
Next on our program is a moving patriotic song entitled Home. This piece, originally performed in Dirk Symphony, features our choir and ASL classes. We hope you will find the lyrics inspiring and uniting as it looks back at our failures and more than anything else our greatness. Free, nothing isn't free, but sometimes means we don't get along. Because same, no, we're not the same, but that's what makes us strong. From the mountains high to the wave crest, there's no way to find better days I know. It's been a long, hard ride, got a ways to go, but this is still the place that we all call home.
Even though I've been doing this for a long time, I still get nervous when I speak in front of people, but especially today, because speaking in front of veterans, people that have served our nation, I have done very little in the way of sacrifices that you have made for our country. My dad served in the Navy in 1956 to 1960. I speak of that because my dad is my hero. And the greatest thing about my dad is that I have never met a person more dedicated. He's 85 years old and he still goes to work, still goes to his office every day. And he learned those in the military. He learned the understanding of what sacrifice means. He learned what it means to be dedicated to our country, to the flag, and to the very ideals of what the United States stands for. Not only my father, but my Uncle Frank, my Uncle Tom, and my Uncle John all served. My Uncle Frank served during Vietnam and recently passed away from stomach cancer attributed to Agent Orange. His sacrifice cost him his life, as many know the sacrifices of the military. I speak on that because I speak to everyone about how we recognize today on the 11th for Veterans Day. But it shouldn't be one day. It should be every day. Every hour, every minute, we recognize the men and the women who have sacrificed so much for us. And it is an honor to speak onto that. It is an opportunity for us to recognize what was given. What was given for us. And while it's easy for us to forget that as today passes, I hope that you walk away today, especially the youth, the young people here, who I really want to speak to, is that you open and you see in your hearts the men and the women who have sacrificed. And let's be frank and let's be real. We have a pretty nice life, right? We've got a great country. We have opportunities that no other country has. We have some opportunities to live in a country where we walk into our houses and there's food. We open up our refrigerators. There's food. There's heat. And then we have the freedom to express what we believe, whether or not we agree with one another. And that sacrifice that the men and women fought for that very meaning, the very meaning to be able to express what we believe. But deeper than that is that the opportunity exists that we see and we live with respect to one another. Our hope is that we see the dignity and the humanity of every man and woman in this country. And that is what my father, my uncles, what the men and women in this room have fought for. And that is something that we cannot ever take for granted. My hope today to you, young people especially, is that you take away from this day and go forward to honor and respect those men and women. Whether they're 85 like my dad, or 18 years old and they're walking into the very first day, signing up for that sacrifice. My hope is that you see that you understand as well that the mere sacrifice to go and to serve a country is not an easy choice. It's not an easy choice. It can be a very difficult choice, especially when you go to make the toughest decisions to protect our country. And for someone that's 18 years old to have to go and to make the toughest decisions is difficult. And then when they come back to our country, we should honor them. We should protect them. We should give them the hope that they deserve for coming back after such a sacrifice that they've given. Whether that's through health care, mental health, to bring them in and give them those types of aid that they need, the support services that our veterans need. Because the data and the statistics aren't great. And we need to be able to do that, to offer them the support when they come back from the military, especially for those that have fought in combat. In my other life, I was a youth minister right out of college. And I did that for about 6 years. I had a young man that was part of my youth group. Wonderful young man. He graduated. This was right during Afghanistan and Iraq. and he made the ultimate decision to go and serve his country. His name was Scott. I still see his face today. He went and was immediately put on the front line. Several months later, during the combat, he was killed. And of course, his funeral was at the church where I was the youth minister. And I remember talking to Mom and the family. And while they were sad, they knew the ultimate sacrifice that he had given, which was his life. I'll never forget Scott. And I'm never going to forget the sacrifice that he made for this country. I could go on and on, but I'm not. But I'm hoping what you take away from today is to honor, respect our veterans. From a heartfelt thank you from the city of Casper, from my family, thank you for serving. Thank you for giving us the greatest sacrifice for this country. I pray that the Lord will continue to bless you the rest of the days of your lives. And so thank you, God bless you, may God bless the United States of America and the state of Wyoming.
Army.
First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, then the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes rolling along. And it's our heroes in liberating strife, who won and served their country, and mercy more than love. America, may God thy glory fly, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you to the principal, the teachers, the staff for bringing all of the veterans here today. It is so appropriate and wonderful that Dean Morgan is doing this. When my son Peter was here, we didn't do this. And for the veterans who are here and the students who brought them, I mean, you brought your parents, your grandparents. These people are heroes. You talked about your dad being your hero. My dad's my hero. They're heroes. When you say, what's a hero? Well, to me, it's somebody who is willing to put their life on the line. Their life on the line for the benefit and protection of someone else. And that's what you did. And we're very, very grateful. Now, they talked about, well, you follow the cowboy code. Live each day with courage. Take pride in your work. Do what needs to be done. And we heard both the mayor and the principal talk about the flag. So I know a lot of the students here have been to Mount Rushmore. You know, there are 4 presidents up there, you know who they are. You know, yes, you know, it's Teddy Roosevelt. Let me talk about 2 of them. Abraham Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt. Abraham Lincoln's shortest speech had to do with the flag. 1861, his first year as president of the United States. And they were doing a flag raising ceremony at the White House. And he said, "It is my job to raise the flag." And then he pointed to everybody else out there. And he said, "And it is your job to keep it up." And that's what the American people have been doing ever since. That's what the men and women in this room who serve their country have done, and they've done it for all of us. And then Teddy Roosevelt was known as the cowboy president. He loved to come to Wyoming. And he had the Rough Riders in the Spanish-American War. Well, if you go through the history, the idea of the Rough Riders actually came from Wyoming. And it started with something called the Cowboy Cavalry. At the time of the Spanish-American War, we don't have much of a military in the United States, and Teddy Roosevelt talked to his buddy, Buffalo Bill Cody, of Cody, Wyoming, and he said, I'll give you my whole Wild West show, because those people who had to ride horses and shoot, and that's what they needed at the time. And so you have the Cowboy Cavalry. Teddy Roosevelt then became the Cowboy President. And subsequently, the Cowboy Cavalry is still in existence today as the Cowboy Cannoneers. They're the Wyoming National Guard, the 300th. My wife Bobby's dad, Bob Brown from Thermopolis, in Korea, and the Korean War, was in the Cowboy Cannoneers. And when I was in Afghanistan visiting our troops, and John, you've been in Afghanistan as well, it was the Cowboy Cannoneers that I visited just 2 years ago for Thanksgiving, when I went with President Trump in 2019 to be with the troops at Thanksgiving. So there's this incredible tradition of service by the people of Wyoming. And Dean Morgan Jr. is a big part of it. There was a teacher here, 37 years a teacher, Leo Sanchez was his name, taught history, very involved. None of these students have had it. Maybe your parents had it. Maybe your grandparents had it as a teacher. He's a Korean War veteran, and just today, we dedicated the bridge on the road to the Veterans Cemetery, the Leo Sanchez Freedom Bridge. Well, in a couple of minutes, we're going to bring all of the veterans and have them recognized. And I'm going to give each one of them a military challenge point. It's a sign of honor and recognition and respect. And the way I'm going to do it is accompany your hand and turn it over, shake hands with that veteran and turn it over to them and thank them for what they've done for us. This has in the middle the cowboy, the Wyoming cowboy, steamboat, the horse, the bucking bronco, and it says Wyoming on it, and it's to remind each of those veterans that they're cowboys, and cowboys never quit, and cowboys never complain, and neither will the United States military. They are in it all the way. Now, when the Morgan mentors were up here, we're reading, one of the readers had mentioned something about veterans come old and young. And since last Veterans Day, here in Wyoming, we lost another Marine, and he was only 20 years old, Seth Rasmussen from Buffalo, Wyoming. It was a training accident, one of those Osprey helicopters. And when we talk about freedom and the cost of freedom, and freedom not being free, Ronald Reagan said freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. Said it's not something you inherit, it's not passed in the bloodstream. It has something that has to be fought for, protected, defended, and then handed down to the next generation to do the same. And that's why I think it's so important what we're doing here today at Dean Morgan, letting that next generation know how important the work that you all have done for them. Now, my dad was in World War II, he was in the Battle of the Bulge. He signed up 3 days after Pearl Harbor, and he stayed until the war was over. And I have with me, and I carry with me when I go and see the troops overseas, his dog tags that he wore in the Battle of the Bulge in 1944. And from the time I was a little kid, he would always say, John, you should thank God every day because you live in America. You don't know how fortunate you are. And we are so blessed and so fortunate to live in this great country that I do thank God every day, and I thank God also for the men and women that continue to fight and serve to make sure we can continue to be free. And I God bless them, and I God bless Wyoming, and I God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Sergeant Richard Herrera, 5 years United States Army. Robert Corbin, 22 years old. April Ramos, 22 years, Army.
John Webb, retired Army.
Nicole Smith, Army. Stephen Fair, Army.
David Wingrich served in Vietnam.
Dr. Ray Varney, U.S. Army, Air Force, and National Guard. Chris Sulzin, Air Force.
Sarah Sullivan, Air Force.
John Webb, U.S. Army. Brian Higgins, Air Force.
Raymond Frederick Jr., U.S. Army.
Joe Downing, U.S. Army. Garrett Berkey, U.S. Army. Keith Wilhelm, Air Force. Chase Moore, U.S. Army.
As we honor the veterans in attendance, we want to especially recognize a few of our teachers who are veterans. Paul Gilmore, 23 years, United States Air Force.
Aaron Temple, Army, 1999 to 2008. Mokros, 27 years, United States. Though we do not have all the names of those who are in attendance, we would still love to recognize and celebrate you as well. If you are a veteran whose name we did not read, please come to the front and stand so we can recognize you. Again, thank you for your service. We would be remiss to not talk about take a moment to remember those who are no longer with us. Please join us as we take a moment of silence in honor of the service and sacrifice of veterans throughout the history of our nation.